Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. This is episode 17. Today is October 29th, 2018, and in this episode, we are continuing our discussion of the first book in the Mistborn Era 2, The Alloy of Law. I am Bill, and as always, I am joined by my incredibly timely co-hosts, Amy and Jordan.
Hello.
Timely?
Time bubbles.
Ah, okay. I see where the connection is this time.
Both slow and fast.
It's the first one I haven't.
The first one that's thrown you.
Yeah, we're just like, I don't get it. What are we doing?
I got it that time.
I was having a hard time, especially anyway. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or are watching the videos on YouTube, we want to remind you that it is possible for our listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode live at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We record these episodes of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, take an active part of the discussion, let us know what you think, and make us laugh. We like laughing, and chat's fun.
I can confirm. Do enjoy laughing.
Mm-hmm.
So how have y'all been? What's going on in your lives?
Little children with colds, which stinks, but you know.
Little children, I'll take thee away.
Well, I don't know about you, Bill, but I'm getting ready to go with some cool people to BlizzCon.
Oh, who are those people?
Oh, I don't know, just random people.
Oh, okay.
Just not me.
What about you? What are you planning to do later this week?
I'm going with some cool people too, and one less cool person.
That's hurtful.
No, I'm going with some really cool people.
That's hurtful. I supported you, and this is how you repay me.
Clearly. No, but yeah. So I am excited to go to BlizzCon. We are going, as well as the voice of the Sandersonian Institute that you hear at the beginning of each podcast. Our friend Rachel will be joining us, as well as our friend Josh and several others who are wonderful people.
But not Amy's Josh, a different Josh, because there's lots of Joshes. Lots of
That
Joshes.
would be mean for Josh to come with us to BlizzCon and leave Amy behind.
With the kids, with the coughs.
With the kids, with the sniffles.
Yeah, that would not have been okay.
The sniffle children. Yeah.
So.
Anyway, beyond that, however, guess what, guys? We got a giveaway today.
Yay!
If you're following us in social media, you may have noticed that it's a slight hiccup, and we're giving a different prize than we mentioned in the last podcast, but I think you'll still be excited because, guys, this is pretty cool. These are allomantic dice. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that you roll them and you get allomancy, because that would be amazing, and I wouldn't give those away. But these are still pretty cool. They are silver-colored dice that there's 10 of them here, and each one has a different allomantic symbol for a different metal that is used for allomancy. Each of them has a different one on the sixes place. So we will be giving these away. And should we just go ahead and jump right in, or?
I think so. All right, I am going. It was between we had 24 entrants.
Before we do the giveaway, just to give a shout out. These are actually made by Crafty Games. They're the people who made the Mistborn adventure game, which is basically the tabletop RPG based on Mistborn. Takes place on Scadrial. There's a couple expansions out now. That one of them is for Alloy of Law, which I don't have that one yet, but the dice themselves are pretty cool. So
it's actually an interesting lore read if you're into that type of stuff, just because of I don't know about anyone. I like seeing how things are adapted, and trying to figure out how they adapt certain Mistborn powers to more game environment I find it very interesting and fascinating.
Well, and also if you've read the short stories in Arcanum Unbounded, there's one called The 11th Metal that Brandon actually wrote specifically to put in the player guide for the Mistborn adventure game. So, all right, Jordan, let's generate some number. We're not going to roll these dice, but Jordan's going to roll some virtual dice for us.
Yeah, because that would ruin their resale value or something. All right, here we go. Clicking the number. It came out to 16.
Of course, it came out to 16.
That's fitting.
That is incredibly fitting.
Oh, man.
And at number 16, we have one of our patrons, Tyler, no last name given. We will reach out to you via Patreon or via Discord, because I think you're on our Discord channel as well. So congratulations. We will reach out to you, and we will get those sent to you as soon as we can.
I'm sorry. I just want to dwell on this a little bit. Because we joked about the fact that we got to the 16th episode, and that's when we hit our goal for $16. And Bill, what was about the purchase price of these dice?
The purchase price of these dice is actually $16.80. So I'm getting a kind of creepy vibe right now, guys.
Oh, Rust and Ruin, that's fun.
We're 2 days away from Halloween, and things are getting eerie in here. So, well, so that's exciting. We will get those over to you. Before we dive in, anything else, or should we just
dive in?
Get on into it.
Yeah, let's do this. Right. We should actually talk about the fact that there's a plot that goes along with this story. This episode.
Yeah. So last episode, we talked a lot about the world building that Brandon had made with this, especially just advancing the world that he had created with that magic 300 years into the future. Really cool concepts, but there's also an actual story that took place in that world, so we want to talk about that. Before we do, we want to remind those of you who may just be tuning in, this may be your first time listening to our show, we are currently devoting an episode or 2 or 4 to discussing each book's storyline, as well as discussing briefly how it fits into the Cosmere with all the other stories. And then once we've made our way through everything, we'll start devoting episodes to some of the different concepts that span the various series and discuss what we're calling our aluminum foil hat theories, both our own and those that are submitted by our listeners. So if you've got an idea about the Cosmere that you want us to talk about during the show, make sure to send it to us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com. Speaking of where the story fits into the Cosmere, do y'all know where this fits in timeline-wise?
It's after.
I looked at it and I forgot now. It's
after Stormlight Archive.
It's shortly after Stormlight.
That's right. Yeah.
So just if people are wondering, that's where it fits in the timeline. Which actually is interesting because one of the, and I don't think this is a spoiler because this is from an epigram. It's just a very minor thing. One of the letters requests that Hoyd return to Scadrial, and Hoyd's back on Scadrial, so maybe that's why.
I don't know.
Who knows the methods of Hoyd?
Oh, Hoyd, you're so Hoyd.
It's true.
Yes.
So yeah, we are still on Scadrial, and we want to remind our listeners there are going to be spoilers here for the first Mistborn trilogy, which you should definitely read before continuing to Era 2. We will try to avoid spoilers for Shadows of Self and Bands of Morning, though. So
no guarantees, though.
Yeah, they happen.
Okay, so when we start the story, we've got our intrepid cowboy sheriff lawman running through the wastes with
cowboy sheriff lawman noble twinborn,
along with his hyper competent lady companion. And
I thought they were weren't they actually married though?
I think they were.
Yeah.
Were they married?
Yeah.
I don't think they were married.
Oh, dang it. Now I gotta look up things.
I don't know. I always thought they were.
Looking things
Find
up.
it,
I'll
Jordan.
figure it out.
Find it.
Okay. It's fun. Anyway, they were
Compromise,
together.
yep.
That we know for
Yep.
certain. And it kind of ends in tragedy.
Kind of really, yeah.
It does for
Like-
everyone.
Yes.
What?
Everyone in this book has some form of a tragic past.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's some, not all equal, but
Just
Everyone
a little
has
bit
a
of
tragic-
tragedy somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
but it's definitely the most painful on this
But
one.
it seems like most people on Scadrial have tragic past to some degree.
It's not a happy place.
No.
I mean, it was ruled by ruin for quite some time. That's not a happy place. But it's been ruled by harmony for 300 years, so now it should be happy, right?
Yep.
Happier?
Right?
It is happier, and that's
true.
That's at the end. That's the big showdown between Miles and Wax. Is Miles is like, nope, it's flawed, burn it all to the ground, and he's just like,
Max is like, it's continually improving.
yeah, it's like, yes,
it's
it's not perfect, but you don't just because it's not perfect, we don't just ruin everything. We work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make it better. We don't just reboot. Essentially, Miles is saying, have you tried turning it off and back on again? And Harmony says, well, yeah, we did that 300 years ago.
We're not doing it again right now.
Frankly, Scadrial 3.0 is doing way better than Scadrial's 1 and 2.0.
Well, particularly the Ellendale Valley.
Yeah.
I mean, he's created this paradise where one thing I noticed in the town center, basically what is it, the field of origination, or anyway, it talks about how flowers just grow there because they're heated by a hot spring beneath, and it reminded me a little bit of
Field of Rebirth.
Field of Rebirth. It reminded me a little bit of something that happened in Warbreaker. So I'm wondering if there's some connection there, but we'll talk about that at a different time.
Clean up. Apparently, they were married according to the copper mine.
Okay, I did not know. I was not aware of that.
I think in a later book there's some mention of his
I
wife.
think they meant.
And so
Yeah, I
that's
think they mentioned
why
that in one of the later ones.
that's why I was like, I'm pretty sure they were married. And
Okay.
I don't. Yeah. So anyway, I feel.
So
better.
yeah, that ends, and that gives our hero his tragic past because, like you said, all of them need a tragic past, and
And he had a tragic past even before that too.
was it tragic?
Well, his parents and the carriage. Remember?
I am
And his
mixing
sister.
stuff up. Well, no, that was his uncle
Well,
and his sister. His sister and his uncle were
But
what brought him back to the city.
that's what brought him back. I think.
I don't know what's up with it. What happened with his parents?
I'll
either
blame
way,
his.
the fact that
I'm blaming his uncle.
Okay,
his uncle happened probably.
his uncle's a not nice person.
Yeah.
No.
Not so much.
Okay, so anyway, every tragedy happens, and of course, what do our heroes do when tragedy happens? They leave, and they go into a life that is not suited for them because they want to be normal, but they're never normal. So,
Nope. They're protagonists.
No.
and that's when we get wonderfully awkward scenes, like when Wax is out on the date with Lady Set, okay, Lady Set. Think about that for a minute, because Lady Set would be descended from Ashweather Set, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's a Ladrian. The Ladrians are descended from Breeze and Alrianne, who is a Set. So they're cousins.
Somewhere down the
Distant,
line.
300 years distant cousins, but when I realized that this last time, I was just like, ew.
Yeah, but I mean that it happens.
It's
Yeah.
par for the course for royal families.
Plus, there's
Yeah.
not that many people at the end of the world the first time, so they do have to kind of rebuild. But I just saw that and I was just like, huh, that's okay then.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the other thing that's interesting, I just think because you brought up how they all get sort of stuck in a world they're not quite suited to. Because Wayne isn't suited for the city life. What with his wanton kleptomania.
that said,
He
He
adapts
handles
well.
himself quite well. He
Yeah.
adapts very well.
He does adapt well. He's still constantly stealing crap, and you just go through, and everyone doesn't quite fit their thing. And I thought it was interesting how there seemed to be sort of a dual message throughout this book about the difference between doing your duty and knowing who you were, and in an it's an alloy of law, and mixing the two, where Wax's story is learning how to be both the Lord and the lawman. Maricy's story is learning how to be both the law woman, and it's because that's sort of her storyline, is learning how to actually do all this while also still being the scholar she is.
Well, and just developing any sort of confidence, because she has been, like, from every single direction, she's been told you're worthless.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Her father, who refuses to acknowledge her as his daughter, just keeps, like, everything about her he tells her is wrong, from her birth to her
Her
what's the word I'm
ability.
looking for? Yeah, her allomantic ability.
Mm-hmm.
He just, like, how rude is that?
That would
It's like,
that would
your
make
magic
sense.
isn't cool magic.
Yeah, it's useless magic, and that would mess with your ego so bad.
The thing that I love about her, though, to me, her character arc was the most interesting of the book. The thing I found interesting about her is she doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, and she goes about this book very unsure of herself, but she doesn't go about the book passively.
Not at all.
When the wedding fight breaks out, she ends up participating and potentially saves Wax's life with the shots she takes.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, at the end, where she's the linchpin of the entire plan.
Even before that, the reason she is involved at all is because she insisted on joining Lord Harms and Steris when they first go to meet Waxilium. Actually, that's one thing I do want to talk about that I thought was interesting. Is in the prologue of the book, he refers to himself as Wax. As soon as he rejoins society, like even in the first chapter, he still goes by Wax. It's when he finally decides to take off the holsters and put away and he gives the chest to Guillaume, that suddenly every time he refers to himself, it says Waxilium. And I just thought that's a really cool literary touch that Brandon put in.
Yeah,
Because
I hadn't noticed it, but it probably was a subconscious thing for me.
Yeah,
too.
Wayne always calls him Wax. But in his viewpoint chapters, it's Wax, Wax, Wax until finally, after that night where he wasn't able to pull the trigger against the muggers, he suddenly said it's time to stop being Wax from the Roughs and to become Lord Waxilium. And from then on, he refers to himself as Waxilium, and like that's how it is in all of his viewpoint chapters. That's how the narrator refers to him. I just thought that was a really cool literary touch that Brandon put in.
I also like the unintentional mystery that Wax creates around himself, even when he's trying to reintegrate into society, where he's finally. Which, look, if there's anything Brandon likes putting into his stories, it's people who misbehave in a public setting. Whether it's Elend reading books or Dalinar like attacking his food with vigor and ignoring conversation, or Wax just up in KAT, I'm out of hearing, out of parties, in the middle of the mist, in ways that just like everyone's like, where did Lord Ladrian go? And it's just like, he went up and he's just gone. And then he's just like, man, I'm going to climb not the Eiffel Tower, and this is going to be fun. Okay, so for the record, I think it's just supposed to be a regular tower, but in my head, the towers, I always imagine the taller one to be like some sort of Eiffel Tower building. The way he describes it getting thinner at the top.
I was seeing it as the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building.
Yeah. Oh, and he's clearly trying to evoke that the
skyscraper, the new skyscrapers.
The dueling skyscrapers,
Yeah.
in particular. But in my head, that entire fight scene between him, push and pull, happens on the Eiffel Tower because it just looks cooler in my head with the pushes and the pulls.
Well, and it's a nice little nod back to the fights at Credit Shaw.
Definitely. It's interesting because the world of Mistborn before was a world of metal, but not of metal buildings. The buildings were still mostly lumber, but as the world has gotten bigger, it's suddenly a world of metal buildings. I love the concept of the couriers that move throughout the town, the coin shots and the lurchers, who just sort of pull themselves around and push themselves around, just delivering just news.
Anything, and
it's interesting. And so Wax is flying around the city above the mist and just sort of, this is nice and relaxing. And that's his escape. His escape is literally to get above it all.
Especially in a world where there's no longer any Mistborn. There are few people who can travel where a Mistborn could travel.
Mm-hmm.
The combination, though, of being a coin shot and being a skimmer allows him to travel to places that most others would be a little bit more scared to go.
And I love because he's evoking the frontier, and we saw some shades of this in Shadows of Silence in the Forests of Hell, or Shadows for Silence, where it's the loss of the frontier is sort of this this tragedy, like where you acknowledge its progress, but you also acknowledge the loss of something. Because Wax, when he's looking at these giant towers that are now rising above the mists into the what did they call it? The Ascendant Warriors Field or something like that. They referred to the area above the clouds as something to do with the Ascendant Warrior.
I don't know.
I don't remember the term, but I remember the saying that.
Yeah, and he sort of, as he's up there, this is his. Very much like Vin and Kelsey are like, the night is mine. He very much evokes that. He looks out and he sees that these buildings are now rising above it, and he's like, everyone's going to be able to see this. And he's sort of both marveling at that and lamenting it as well. Mm-hmm. That it's losing something special with this progress.
This is a completely different context. Well, it's a similar concept, but a different is, for example, when they made the Lord of the Rings movie, I was excited because I'm like, this is something that I've loved for a long time, and it's going to be spread, and a bunch more people are going to know what it is. And then I stopped and I was like, a bunch more people are going to, it's not going to feel as much like mine anymore. Mm-hmm. Because there's just this niceness to knowing something. This is exclusive to me. It feels very personal. And recognizing that when it enters the broad perspective, suddenly it becomes cheapened because there are people who who will see it and experience who just will not appreciate it.
To the same extent, yeah.
And so
I don't know. I found that very interesting. Just that him starting to see what the world is becoming.
Yeah, I do love the concept of the mist coat replacing the mist cloak because he's a rough rider. He's out in the roughs, and so what does he have? He has a duster, but he's also a steel shot,
duster,
or a coin shot, and so he's got a mist coat. And the first time I thought of that, I was just like, "Oh, Brandon, you showman, you."
It's so I want one. If it wouldn't be horribly impractical, but I want
and
one.
Incredibly expensive.
Yeah,
but, oh my gosh, I love it. Wax would be a fun costume to do. There are very few costumes that I think, I would want that, but
most of them that I've seen have him in more of a suit. Actually, have them dressing up in a suit and a bowler hat.
Right, but I want the mist coat.
The mist coat, yeah.
Dusters are just cooler.
Yes.
Dusters are awesome. Okay, so can we talk about the scene where Wayne just pops up for the first time at Wax's house, and he's just like, "I've got people coming. You can't be here." And then they show up, and you hear this little, and he turns around, and Wayne is a completely different person.
He's his uncle.
Yeah.
And he looks older because Wayne just understands people.
Mm-hmm.
I love Wayne. Just makes me happy.
First of all, the thing I love about Wayne is he reminds me of my family and my friends in that any chance he is giving it to Wax verbally in the shorts and trying to sabotage him.
Oh, yes.
It's just like, with friends like these, who needs enemies? But if frankly, at this point, like, had Miles just left Wax alone, Wayne would have ruined his chances of saving the day long before it. Because at some point, Wax was going to have to give in and murder Wayne. It just was going to have to happen. But as long as there's common cause. I counted no less, I think, than 3 times where Wax had murderous thoughts towards Wayne in various scenes, where he's just like, gonna kill him.
I think everybody has murderous thoughts towards Wayne.
Oh yeah, Marcy, I think, offered. She at least offered that Wayne has deserved a lot of the limbs he's lost.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and of course there's Renette.
Yeah, Renette's willing to shoot anyone, but
who
Wayne
actively tries to kill him. But no, I just love that he pops up and just keeps showing up and thinks, this will work. This is fine. Nobody's going to have a problem with this.
Yep.
It's a good trade. And you're just like, oh, I'm so good you have no concept of valuation, because sometimes you've robbed people blind and other times you have gifted them something amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like with that bullet, he gives somebody an aluminum bullet once, and he's like, and they're probably just going to chuck it.
Yeah. Well, the other one I love...
I traded trading. Let's talk about Wayne trading.
Didn't one time he traded like someone's nice hat for a sandwich or something? Like it's.
I think he did.
Yeah, that does sound familiar.
He's just like, no, it's a fair trade. It's just like, no,
that is not.
Or he traded a drawing for one of the aluminum guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's like, I left a nice drawing I made for it. It's just like,
no,
that aluminum gun is priceless. They talk several times about how much those things cost to make.
And how it's like those aluminum bolts, it's like shooting gold at people.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first time we see them, the thieves don't even have them loaded in their weapons because
they're so worried about
that's
wasting
an expensive shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and something Miles sort of curses them for, because it's like, Wax was going to be there, guys.
Right.
Boy, do they regret that when Wax just sits there and says, all right, it's time.
The elemental gunfight.
Oh my, that wedding scene, first of all, ugh.
Well, the thing that's interesting is throughout it, Wax intended to stay out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like, I am not involved. I am not a lawman anymore.
Yeah.
And then finally, Miles can't stand it, and he shoots the former cop in the head. And Wax says, all right, we're done.
I'm trying to remember who it was. There's someone who talks about how, like, true virtue is to be strong, but like not use it. Like that's true virtue, because you have the strength, but you don't use it. And at that moment, it's just, go ahead, give me an excuse. And Wax and Wayne show just how dangerous they are as men.
Well, and then in the end, the conversation that they have with, what's his name? The chief of Redden.
Yeah.
The chief of police. And he talks about, he's giving him a dressing down because he finds out how many people were killed. And then he finds out, those were all casualties on the other side. The only casualty of an innocent person happened before he got involved. And that's why he got involved.
It's one of those things where it's just, I can imagine if you're Wax, you just look at him and you're just like, uh-huh. No, keep going. Keep going.
Well,
good.
And he actually even comments on it, talking about, a small man with too much power. And then he looks at Wax and he says, I'm not you don't threaten me. And he says, good. I haven't said anything threatening yet. And it's just sort of you're not threatened by me because I haven't threatened you yet.
I haven't stepped up to that at all.
Well, it's because he says it in a way. He's like, I don't feel bullied by you, and Wax is just because he's so petty, and it's so clear it's all about territory and jurisdiction, and Wax is just like, no, you're not threatened by me, because
it's like if you were threatened by me, you'd know.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's more just like Wax just doesn't even care.
You're not worth threatening. Yeah, that's
he doesn't
true.
engage in it because it's not worth his time.
It's like, I'm not just above you in station, because that'd be the petty thing. I'm above you in station. Wax knows he's just a better person than this man, and this man can't touch him. And it's so obvious he's just trying to bluster about, and Wax just does not have time for him, especially after his fiancée has been kidnapped.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're throwing all these petty things at me. We need to find them. We need to fix this problem. I'm going to do it. If you get in my way, I'll walk over you. I have no intention to do so, but
but I'll do what I gotta do.
Exactly.
Well, the thing I love about Wayne with that as well, Wayne sort of seems to understand that there's politicking going on, but Wayne's sort of off in his own land, and he talks about dirty Connors, which, first of all, I love that they're Connors, not coppers. Because, first of all, a copper would be is a different thing in this universe, and it matters because of metal. But they're constables, so now they're Connors,
because we've got this weird mix of New York and London. And
exactly.
Wayne is very, very London.
And I just love how he's just like those dirty Connors, and then Wax is like, Wayne, we're Connors. And he's like, not anymore, we're not.
Oh, Wayne. Delightful, awkward, bizarre Wayne.
He's just he's so true, like just trying to be good, but not exactly lawful, even though he's on the side of the law. He's just sort of his own brand of what's right.
Wayne is one of the most complicated but believable characters that Brandon has created, in my opinion.
Finding out about his past is, when he talks about it with Marcy, is shocking.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, so that's why you don't use guns. Because you're a criminal.
Well, and it's not just a criminal. He basically broke himself because he's always been a good person.
Yeah.
He just got into some trouble, and it went a lot farther than he ever intended, and it broke him, and then Wax was finally just like, okay, we'll fix this. You're of use. You're a useful person who has value. And instead of just writing him off like Miles did, essentially, Wax is just like, no. You have value still. Let's, show you that value, and basically turns his entire life around.
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting thing, because Miles openly disdains Wayne's existence and talks about that.
Miles wants to kill Wayne.
And
Miles wants Wayne dead.
And it's a murderous, like, it's not, it's justice. It's, no, he needs to die.
Well, especially because he and Wayne have something in common.
Yeah.
Because they're both bloodmakers.
And it's so creepy just how bloodthirsty he is for Wayne's blood specifically. And it's like, okay, if Miles is arguing justice, and he killed a man, he deserves to die. Whereas Wayne says, yes, he killed a man. Yes, Wax. That family, Wax is like, he's killed a man, and he has caused this family suffering that will never go away. That pain will never stop. But he's made him into a lawman, and the family's getting half of whatever Wayne earns, which helps them sort of get through the fact that they've lost the breadwinner in their family. And the family is better off in that situation because Wax sat there and said, okay, yes, justice has to be met, but there's also there's also this other half of society and trying to get along and survive. And
Other thing that's
it's an alloy.
Yeah. The other thing that's really interesting about Wayne is, and this just says a lot about who he is the fact that he knows he is never going to get forgiveness from this family. They have made it excruciatingly clear to him that he will never have their forgiveness, and they want him to suffer. And he does feel that pain and that guilt, but he still continues to atone for it. He is, because that's the thing, you said that they're getting half of everything that Wayne has. He doesn't have to give them anything at this point, except that internally he does.
Yeah.
There's no external force that is making him give them that money. The only thing that's doing it is his decision that I need to do everything I can to make this right. Even if it's impossible to make right, I still need to try.
Mm-hmm.
And that just says so much about Wayne, and that's why he's one of my favorite characters. Because, my gosh, in the face of that.
Well, and I love how it completely subverts Maricy's expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did not expect him to be a criminal at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he's just so happy. And to have that kind of a tragic past and to be that upbeat as easygoing as Wayne is, that's hard. And when you see into those deeper recesses, it makes him just such a rich character who likes hats.
Yep.
So what
he
about
reminds me of so the one thing that occurred to me is he reminds me of improv people who do improv. I did a little bit in college, and like one of the big rules with that is you don't say no when someone proposes something. It's yes and then you just go from there. And that just seems to, when we were talking about how Wayne could fill in and pretend to be pretty much anybody, is that he just seems to embody the yes and then we just proceed. So anyway, we got deep, so I was like, oh, I can't really mention that now. But
and he studies people so much that he's able to take little bits from here and little bits from there and create a whole new person
with great backstory.
With a great backstory.
In a way, he's now that you mention it sort of like that, he reminds me sort of Shalon.
A little bit.
Yeah, I could
it's
see
actually
that.
not a bad.
Hers is very different the way because she's drawing them, but it's an interesting comparison, I think.
Yeah,
because they're both in a way
about that.
creating an illusion.
Yeah.
His is just a lot more physical, and hers is optical.
Yeah, 2-dimensional. Usually. So.
I love the scene where Maricy shows up at the mansion.
I loved this scene.
And Wax is, doing all sorts of experiments and she's like, does that look, what was it, blue? He's like, does that look blue to you? She's like, no. He's just doing
good.
all this mad scientist, and she's just looking at him. She's like, he's wearing some ridiculous goggles. She's like this guy that she's idolized for years and is developing a crush on.
And he's not
he's
at
just
all.
sort of
Yeah.
in full dork mode. And it's just
this is the Dawn shot.
Yeah. The other interesting thing was the propriety again coming up. Is like she goes into the room and like Wax doesn't think anything of the fact that it's just him and her in the room.
Right.
And she's like, this, it starts to feel a little bit weird about it because she's grown up with propriety, knows that she's not supposed to be alone in the room with a guy, just the two of them. And he gets oh, that's right. I'm supposed to do that now. I'm supposed to care about these things. And so like she's like, no, it's fine. It's not really a big deal. It was just interesting to have one more instance of him not fitting in with society because he's been out of it for so long.
Right.
Well, and then on top of it, it's also sort of for her, I think it's sort of a signal to her, because she's grown up in it, but you can tell she's very logical in her nature. She's a scholar. She sees the arbitrariness of a lot of things, but has always been told, it doesn't matter. It's the arbitrariness is important. And for the first time in her life, she's got this positive role model that's saying, no, it's arbitrary. Now, it's not to say you shouldn't observe it at all, because what people think of you does matter.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. Right now, we're trying to save lives. Right now, we push propriety aside a little bit for the sake of getting the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Propriety's fine as long as it doesn't get in the way of what's more important.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was in this scene or another one, where they talk about how propriety is all about how you can't trust anybody. And it's all about making sure that there's all these rules and checks and balances to make sure that your lack of trust in people stays, or something to that effect. I can't.
I'm
forgetting details, but
that's interesting. I've been watching a lot of Frasier lately, and that's sort of the concept behind almost every episode. Is he's afraid of what his hoity-toity friends will think of him, and it's just one of those things. You're like, if you had just admitted you made a mistake, this wouldn't be a problem. But because they don't trust each other, there's this awkwardness and this attempt to look flawless, or else they're going to attack you and destroy everything. It's just
and that's the interesting thing about Wax and Wayne and Marcy as she gets pulled into their little circle, is they trust each other implicitly, where it's just, I know your intentions, go.
We all have the same goal. We're all working towards the same thing.
Yeah, and Marcy's first step in that wasn't the conversation at the table, which was sort of her introduction into the group, where Wayne was posing as a waiter.
Yeah, a waiter.
And
am I supposed to pretend where she's just like, am I supposed to act offended about this, or how am I supposed to respond?
But when she takes that first shot at the guy that Wax didn't see, and so for the first time she acted without someone bidding her to do so, where she just said
her own initiative.
Yeah, I'm not going to wait for Wax to approve it. I think this is the right thing to do. And for Wax, that sent the signal, because later on, while he's still, playing it safe with her, because she is a rookie, she, this is a new world for her, he trusts her and her judgment.
And it was kind of interesting seeing her building on her theory and him building on his experience, and how they were able to mesh pretty well together that way, and that they could go, oh, well, we can extrapolate this and this and this is a more likely scenario for them to go in, and just kind of figure out what was going on better that way.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is a look back at how she grew up with her father telling her she was worthless. Suddenly she gets this validation from somebody she idolizes, and it allows her to step up. It allows her to go on her own initiative, because for example, with the scene where they're discussing the theories, and Wax just leans back and he just says, "It's taking me all night to come to the conclusions that you just came to in it.
It's
just
like
a few minutes.
Just a few minutes," and she's like, "Well, you were tired." She tries to back off.
No, it was. I had some guidance from you.
Yeah.
Which was true, because she was looking over his notes.
But at the same time, it was a very different perspective, and so they worked well together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's because Wax sort of stumbled into the study part of being a lawman, the detective work, whereas she's studying detective work at the university. And the other thing that's interesting, because the one thing they both really have in common when they're talking and like, that's an interesting theory in working on stuff like that, is the fact that both of them are untethered from the bureaucracy of running a city. So so there is a little bit of idealism in both, because Wax is coming at it from, he got to be the man who did everything in a smaller town. Right. And she's talking about it from a very high level of city planning and not on a very individual level. They're sort of on literally opposite ends of the spectrum. Whereas you got the constables who have to worry about the politics, the lords, the mills.
It's the whole reason why Batman's able to do stuff that the Gotham police aren't able to.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't have to worry about, he's a vigilante. So
He goes where he needs to go. He doesn't have to worry about, that's in so-and-so's district, so I can't go there, or I have to cooperate with them, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
No,
Well, and the other thing I love about this scene, I think it's this scene, is when they're talking and Wax is explaining a lot of the reasoning behind the legends about him. It's like you walked right into the jailhouse, you saw his picture, you took it off, and you went after the most dangerous guy out there, and you went after him. And he just sort of gets the smirk on his face. He's like, he was worth the most money.
I was hungry.
I didn't have any food. I really needed money, and I saw he was worth the most, so I picked him.
So I went for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was basically, it was either starve or go back to the city, or get it, or bag a criminal, and he was worth the most money.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Yeah,
but what about this guy? What about this guy? I lost a bet with Wayne.
Well, it is fun because there's so little actual journalism out there in the roughs. So you would be getting these stories second, third, fourth hand. And there's a natural romanticism about what goes on the frontier.
Well, among that, like, I don't know if you actually read this or not, but because I know you listen to the audiobook, Jordan, but in the hard copy, in the broadsheets, there's an ongoing story called Alamancer Jack.
Yep.
And the something.
It's also one of the short stories in...
Yeah. But it's this romanticized story of what goes on, of being a lawman out in the roughs.
The best note about Alamancer Jack is the fact that it's clear he doesn't read his own stories because his assistant puts in her own commentary on it and doesn't paint him in a flattering light.
It's very Gilderoy Lockhart.
Yes.
Yeah.
As annotated by Harry Potter. So.
And narrated by Sam Smith? Dang it, now I'm forgetting.
I don't know.
It's gonna bug me.
So after this whole conversation over the chemicals and everything, boom goes the dynamite.
That's right, yeah.
So,
goes off.
And the butler did it!
Well, no, he tries to poison him first with tea.
This was one of the best...
Sam Elliott, sorry.
Surprising but inevitable betrayals that Brandon set up, I feel like.
Kush, a sudden but inevitable betrayal.
We talked about in Warbreaker how the betrayal that happens there, we won't talk about it in case we have listeners who haven't read Warbreaker, but the betrayal that happens there didn't feel earned.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it really makes sense. Like, you look back
and you're like,
think,
oh,
okay, I can see, like, just all the different, and he actually goes through things in his mind, and it's all there. And yeah,
my favorite part about that is the fact that Wayne, being a just sort of a kleptomaniac jerk, is what saved his life, because he drinks it first, because he just sort of, it's not kleptomania in that sense, it's just more just to bug Tiom. Takes it, sips it, and he's like, huh, what? Tea's poison. And then collapses. and then the speed bubble gets thrown up, and as the explosion's going, what do you think about this? And Maricy's just like, guys,
it's getting closer.
It's getting bigger.
And then
there's so much fire.
The other thing I love is Wax has 3 big tappings of his iron mind in this book. The first one is at the wedding, where he taps it and then pushes and literally becomes the center of the party.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Then this one, where he taps it enough where it says, like, he's like, because he talks about it increasing until he's the weight of a building.
Well, I love the way they came to that conclusion too, because they're again, talking is a free action when you've got a time bubble up.
Yeah.
But they're trying to think, okay, how do we get out? If I push this way, we're going to go through the windows, and we're going to be going at an incredible speed because we're in a time bubble right now. It's going to shred us. We can't do that. It's like, well, what if you pushed on the walls and blew them out? Well, I'd have to be incredibly heavy to do that. So heavy that I'd fall through the... And they look at each other. And suddenly he just grabs Marcy and taps everything he's got and goes straight down.
And it's just... the fact that he goes around at 3/4 weight his whole life helps, because that means he always has metal reserves. And it makes the fact that in the end that he actually spends his entire metal mind rather incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's been gathering this for a long time.
Well, so I actually started sitting there trying to do math, because I'm a physics major, and whereas storing things like health doesn't really, like, you can't do math on that. He stores he doesn't store weight. He stores his connection to Scadrial.
He stores weight. Okay, don't worry about it.
This bothers me, and I have several questions that Brandon needs to answer. Anyway, but
there's a signing going on next week.
Well, if only
just saying.
If only I wasn't going to be at BlizzCon with some.
No, next week.
Where?
Is it in Orem again?
It's in Orem.
They're always in Orem.
It's either in Orem. No, actually, it might be at the BYU bookstore. Anyway, sorry. So he tapped, and so like to become the weight of a building, where you're, and so I sat here and started game theory in this thing, where I'm like, okay, well, how big a building and stuff. But basically, it comes out to, at that moment, he dropped probably about 6 months worth of weight into that one. It's not a push; it was just a tap. And it's just one of those things that just remind you why ferrochemical stuff is so powerful, especially if you have one of the ones where storing it can be somewhat beneficial, because you can just constantly do it. Right. Well, and there's no upward limit for ferrochemical.
Yeah, they can just drop it all in one go if they want.
The other thing that was kind of a nice little touch is that as he was falling, he did push to slow them towards the end, and he hadn't quite stopped tapping his weight yet. And so you see these nails that have been flattened to just complete discs because he's just got so much weight pushing on them. And it's just a nice little effect.
Yeah, you remember, oh yeah, when Vin and Kelsey got into their pushing contest and they bent that coin in half or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, no, when you start combining the magics, things get broken.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're people. But in this case, nails.
Yep.
Can we talk about the train scenes, both of them?
Yep. The Great Train Robbery Part 1 is how I've got it in the show notes, because just the scene on top of the train.
Oh,
where
what
was happening?
They were
grappling.
Yeah, well, because they were trying.
Miles is basically just like, you can't win. No matter what you do, you can try and snap my ankle. I'll heal it before it even breaks.
Well, and to hammer that point is where we get the joke I made in the last show notes, which was the Miles T-1000 lives, where he got shot directly through the eye, and it just. And I'm just like, he had to have watched Terminator 2 right before this. It had to have happened. Because it's basically that scene, except it's bio. You're just like, oh dear, that's going to be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the thing I love is he starts, because he's, all of a sudden he realizes, wait, I can just wait him out. And then Miles is just like, oh, okay, well, off to kill your friends. Do. And he's like, crap, and gets him into the knife fight, where he's just like, you're not gonna win a knife fight against me.
Well, to the point where, to prevent him from pushing the knife, he takes it, stabs it into his own arm. And he's like, this is a great storage spot.
It's like, that's just wrong.
Well, because he's been healing so much that he no longer even feels pain.
Yeah, he refers to it as a memory.
Which honestly makes sense, because the purpose of pain is to tell you there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. When your body is constantly healing, There's not something wrong. Nothing is wrong anymore. It's just we're good. We're fine.
Just keep going.
You get chopped in half, it'll grow back. It's all right. But oh gosh,
I just love because he throws the metal at him. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Miles isn't thinking, and so he catches it, and he just thinks, "What?" Boom.
He's gone.
Well, because that's not the first. I think it's like the second, or maybe that was the first time where he says that to someone as he pushes them. He just he gives them a farewell because he does that to Push as well in their fight because they both push on something. And then he just taps his weight, and so Push. I
win.
And he just goes fly, just bye. I just love the slight sarcasm there of what.
Well, and you can't have a good Western without the sassy one-liners.
Oh yeah.
They're a requirement.
But those are that train robbery was a great scene.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like a staple, especially in Westerns and things like that you have to have a train fight. And it always ends up with somebody on top. And
I also love the observation that Wax makes is he'd been thinking of Miles as a criminal. Miles was a lawman. He was aggressive. He was going to come to you and just bring the fight.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He was expecting Miles to go to ground, and that's not what an aggressive lawman like Miles does.
Which comes back to Miles' musings in his head, where he's just like, how do more lawmen not become criminals? Where we think about it all day, and eventually we're naturally going to start going to, that's not how I would have done it.
I would have done it so much better.
What is it in Castle, the introduction is there's two types of people who sit around thinking about how to kill people. Serial killers and mystery writers.
Yep.
I'm the guy that pays better.
I don't know. Right. That's a great scene. But I love how the Vanishers are stealing things. They're not stealing things. They're playing shell games.
Mm-hmm.
Which they're
stealing the entire train.
Yeah.
And then putting a new one in.
Uh-huh.
And that's just because that's the most logical solution. How are they getting into these impregnable things without anyone figuring
noticing
it out?
or or taking too long?
But
they're not.
The other thing I love is just the fact that once Wax suddenly realizes, okay, I got to stop thinking of him as a criminal, he can start predicting Miles' next move. Then we get the Miles perspective, and he's like, no, he's relentless. He'll come after us. He'll know where we're going. And then, the fact that he knows Wax is inside the train car.
Mm-hmm.
This idiot's gambit that they pulled off. And he's like... Because he says it to Push and Pull. And he's like, especially because he's in that train car. And Push and Pull, who are members of the set and used to a certain way of doing things, are like, and you brought him here? And he's like, it's an enclosed space. We have control of it. He was going to come after us anyway. This is the best way.
We're controlling the circumstances, right?
And he's like, okay, get ready. Opens it up. And then Wax out idiots them. But it's like, hi. And there's just dynamite everywhere. And he hides behind the safe. And it's just one after another of what is essentially very poor decision making made in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love Miles.
Would you call that weaponized incompetence?
I would call that weaponized incompetence. But it's just things that are fun and just dumb plans that are going to work because these are people who should... Anyone else, this will be crazy. Not for me. This is the A-Team. We can fly tanks. It's okay.
It's what we do.
Han Solo smirks and says, hey, it's me.
Never tell him the odds. Okay, we
Yeah.
gotta talk about that final fight, though.
Well, before we talk about the final fight, I want to talk about Renetta.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just love the weaponry that she creates and her personality and just that visit. Because she's so gruff and just She's lovably gruff.
Yeah, because we talked a lot about her personality and how inventive she actually was, creating like a lurcher house and automating her house long before Alexa was ever invented. And sorry to all the people whose Alexas I just activated. Anyway, the thing that's interesting about her is the fact that she doesn't like the trouble Wax and Wayne bring. Because they are harbingers of doom.
Well, I mean, when you have a house set up to automate, that means you like your comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah. But she still does the right thing.
Yep. Well, they show up. It's like a wizard showing up with 13 dwarves and saying, "Hey, let's go on an adventure." And you just sit and you're just like, "I want to go on an adventure. I want to sit here and eat my crumpets
and have second lunch and second breakfast and whatever else and levensies."
And they're just like, "All right, let's go on an adventure."
Fine, we'll do it.
I hate you.
But the thing is, the reason she does it, because I do think, because she could have retired a very rich woman with how inventive she is and coming up with things like those haze killer rounds. But instead, she A, does the right thing, B, wants it to stay special, and C, knows the best people to try her stuff out are Wax and Wayne.
Oh yeah, she's basically, I mean, she says, "Give me a field report." And what do? They lose it.
Yeah, naturally.
Don't they bring back one of them, though? I thought they
they find Vindication at the end.
That's right.
Oh, do they?
They do.
Must have missed
I
that.
think Marasi finds it maybe or something.
Yeah, because they make some line about them finding it before the Connors show up.
Okay.
Because they would have had to have taken it into evidence, which then would have asked questions.
And they'd Renetta very unhappy.
Very unhappy.
She would have been incredible. I do love, though, that she's sitting there taking pot shots at them as they come up, and Wayne just is like, "Got a pretty gun for you." He just sort of stops, just like, "What kind?"
It's made 100% out of aluminum, and he's just like, okay, and he's like, "Wayne, that's my gun."
That's mine.
Except that, again, Wayne has trouble with the concept of ownership.
Yep.
They're more like guidelines.
It's flexible.
More like guidelines. And then Wayne's just like, "It got us in, right?"
Got in.
And honestly, who's going to appreciate a special gun more than Renetta? Yeah. Honestly. Yeah. Some women, you bring flowers. Renetta, you bring an aluminum gun worth thousands.
And I do like that she knows who made it.
Yeah, she figures it out.
That's what brought up the High Imperial that we've been bringing up in the past.
That's right. Yep.
Because the guy did it as a code.
Okay, so that final fight, though, Jordan, you seem eager, so why don't you start us off?
Okay, so first of all, the only proper way to fight people named Push and Pull are with people named Wax and Wayne. That's just... Brandon went hard on the puns this game.
He had fun with the names.
But the next thing is just the simple fact that he successfully ties up Miles, and he's like, "Aha!" And then Miles like, "Uh-huh." And then reveals that he has dynamite in his glove, and it's just like, and this is going to happen. And Wax is like, "Oh dear." It's just like, okay, well, when you're fighting a Venom symbiote, I guess that's a problem. Because it's hard to kill the thing. And he's just like, "You think you're the only person who has thought to tie me up?" And just in Wax's head, he's like, I hoped,
I was feeling smart about it, but apparently not.
Yeah, and so they're having to fight everyone. They're cross-firing everywhere. They're both running out of their gold and iron mines, respectively. There's the word I'm looking for. And it's interesting because they're both running on they're so desperate. Yeah. And then finally Wax reaches his limit, and he has what is my favorite conversation where he's just like, Harmony, I thought you were going to help me. And he's just like, I did. He's like, I did. And he's just like, he's like, you were supposed to send help. I sent you.
Well, what's happening at that point is Wax is just not just desperate for himself, but desperate for all these people, and he's just like, I thought you cared about these people. I thought you wanted to protect them. Why won't you do anything to save them? And he says, I did do something. I sent you.
And then I just love, because he's just like, I thought you said you were going to help. And he's like, I did. And he's like, I am helping. And he's like, I think you weren't very specific. Like, and it's classic passive aggressive Sazed. The same way he was with the same way he was with Vid, where he likes to it's not really getting a dig at them. It's just sort of teasing them.
Well, it's just he pokes them where he knows they need to be poked.
Yeah, but in a very friendly but teasing manner. It's
very, very affectionate.
And he just, could you send a little more? And then that's when he sees the chest that Tiom had sent away that has Asterions and his duster, and he, just those two lines. You're welcome. Like,
he just like says it, you little troll.
It's right there.
But the thing is, so this makes a lot of sense with what Sazed has mentioned, talking about the fact that he is the mix of preservation and ruin. Mm-hmm. That should, because he has 2 shards, he is 1/8 of Adonalsium. He is, in theory, the most powerful being in all of the Cosmere because of this. Mm-hmm. But they're so opposite to one another, he has issues doing things because he has
spending so much energy keeping the balance.
Yeah, and so I love the concept of him as a god of minimum action, where he's trying to interfere as little as he has to help them along, because he is trying to help people become the best they can, and having to balance societal concerns with environment concerns with, he's thinking
individual
all over the
desires
place.
And everything else. And
if he helps any one side too much, suddenly it does upset the balance.
Yeah, and so he does help Wax. He gives him just the only 2 things he gives him in that fight. He gives him, it's clear he's given him some sort of energy, because Wax is moving a bit beyond what he should have been able to do as far as healing goes. Mm-hmm. Because he's not a blood maker, but he's able to push past some of his pain in a way that he should not be able to do. Mm-hmm. But he gets him his old weapons back. And it's very minimum, but it's just enough. Mm. And I love that. It's a beautiful concept that Brandon has worked on here. Well,
like you said, part of it, it's a mix between in finding who you are. And this is basically, Sazed, who, this is his god that he worships himself, giving him permission to return to that life.
I didn't think about the symbology of that.
Yeah.
Because, essentially, but though that is a divine sign saying, this is who you are. You can be both. And suddenly he's got this renewed energy of, it's like if you've been in a place where you just don't feel comfortable. Like, okay, Jordan, Smash Brothers.
Yes.
If you've been
I am interested where this is going. Very interested.
If you had been, you've been playing Smash Brothers for a long time. If somebody had handed you like a third-party controller and said, "This is what you need to play with now,"
they did that. So it was called the Wii.
And so you're playing with it for a while, and then suddenly somebody hands you your old controller and says, "Here you go."
A GameCube controller is like getting back on a bike.
Suddenly, it just feels like you just realize this is what I'm supposed to do, and you can do so much more.
And it's such that scene is such good, just in the middle of the chaos. Mm-hmm. And the other thing it does that's interesting is Marcy is helping throughout, firing a rifle, And then Miles is just like, okay, scream for me because I'm Sabretooth now. And she like can't, and then Wax leaps it, like just all of a sudden thuds right next to him. And it's such dramatic entrance. And it's so spaghetti western. Just you can almost hear the stirrups. It's amazing. And he's just like, okay, let's do this. And the fight continues. No, that's later. That's a different person. But the thing that's interesting about it is he also still has to save Marcy and the other gunsmith. Wayne's running out of healing.
Yeah.
And what I love is that moment where he does save Marcy. He takes the gun, launches the gunsmith out into the canal.
Poor guy.
And then leaps out and then taps everything in his metal mind. And then flattens an entire building in a display of a push that heretofore has never been seen in the history of Scadrial. Like, we never hear about the Lord Ruler doing anything like that. Could have done something like that.
Oh, yes.
But
I mean, he's probably been storing weight for the last 1,000 years, so he's got some saved up.
Yeah. But Wax spends it all, and the building is gone, and even Miles takes a moment to exult in the glory of what that was. And he's just like, Waxilium.
But
it's
like,
like,
he still wax. He still makes sure everyone's out before he does it.
Oh, the good people.
Yeah, everybody else, yeah.
I just love Waxilium. And it's like, you are an army unto yourself. Why do you follow these people? It's so I love it whenever heroes and villains admire one another. And I just love Miles just being like, oh, that was so cool. And then, which leads to the final confrontation between the only two people left in the gang, the Koloss blooded pewter board, which that's a nice combo. Good work there.
Yeah.
Who has Wayne's hat.
Yep.
And Wayne will never forgive Wax for ruining it with the most bullcrap trick shot in the history of everything. When Miles talks about how Wax has an uncanny ability for shooting that like isn't fair, and then this happens. The one complaint I have, the only one, we never see Wax do a trick shot of some kind. I would have loved some excuse for Wax to split a bullet on an axe head, or something else that fits in sort of that Annie Oakley style of trick shooting. Just to sort of inform us that Wax isn't just accurate. Wax is...
He's a dead shot.
Yeah. And so that's my only complaint about it, is they told us how good a shot he is. They didn't tell us how precise he is, but it's an amazing concept because they've built up the fact that bullets going in and out of a speed bubble act erratically, and you can't plan for it. And then Wax is like, okay, fires the one because he can't get a clear shot, and he's just like, and then he watches what angle the bullet goes off in. And he's just like, okay, boom, shoots. It's
and
then it's like, forget curving bullets. We're gonna ricochet bullets.
We're gonna ricochet bullets off of time.
Yes.
Like, we're not just bouncing off of walls; we're bouncing off of time itself.
Yeah. And then, so you would think that would be the end of the story. Like, it's just cinematically, that's the pinnacle. You don't get cooler. Until they literally waste Miles' time. Like, I like to talk. I like to waste people's time. It's true. I can't waste time the way Marcy can. Marcy could make people lose hours beating someone up. Miles is getting pure satisfaction, is finally going to kill Wax, and that's the losing move. The winning move was the man who lives to run away lives to fight another day. Because he did not think of who was standing there.
Yeah. Well, it's because, again, it's a worthless power.
Yeah.
Does he even know that she has one?
I think he knows.
I think he does.
He has pretty good intel on everything. And so I would think...
I'm pretty sure he knows.
Okay.
And so I would be surprised if he didn't know, but he would think the same thing, which is ironic from him given what his allomantic power is and how useless it is viewed by everyone else. Right. And he makes a good point to be like, he thinks there's some value to it. He's not quite sure if it's correct, but he thinks there's some value to it. Right. And Marasi, who also thinks there's no value to it, it takes Wax and Wayne to help her come out and find, no, there's a use to this.
Yeah.
And she wastes his time until he can't get away. He doesn't have dynamite. He can't blow up the entire precinct with them. And they finally haul him away, and he was undone.
They just systematically take away all of his metal mines until he has nothing left.
And it still takes him a while to kill him at that.
Boy, that was a haunting scene.
Oh, yes. All right, but we're gonna need to close soon. But Amy, I do have to, because I know you like a lot of the romances. What were your thoughts on the ending?
It was a little bit surprising, but it was good too, because you think about the age difference, and Wax is quite a bit older. Which
but in that setting, that's not as big a deal.
It wasn't as big of a deal, yeah. But I mean, he'd already said he was going to be engaged to Steris, and Steris doesn't get much time in the book because she's kidnapped for like 3/4 of it.
I honestly think that Steris evolved quite a bit in Brandon's mind between writing this book and writing the next two.
Yeah, she really does, because she really doesn't get much screen time at all. She just comes off as...
In the later books, though, she's awesome.
I love her so much in the future. Like, at first I was like, how could he not let, Marasi and Wax? That makes so much more sense. And then I'm like, no, I like Steris. That works.
It was just one last opportunity for Brandon to completely subvert expectations.
Because, you could totally see the hero worship in there. I think Wax gently lets her down and is just like, it's just not, it wouldn't work well. And
it's just sort of a, what?
No, there's no romance.
You were building but in the end, it's just like, okay, that was kind of cool.
So we're just buddies,
This is the part where I actually say this is what I expected him to do. For me, it didn't subvert expectations, but that comes from two things. One, I was icked out. I'm icked out by age difference. That's something I've always had issue with. Breeze and Alrianne always bugged me. Even though I sort of forgave it because Alrianne was tugging on his emotions too, so whatever. But the thing that, for me, that I loved about it, because I was worried he was going to go the other way, because I wanted him to stick with Steris. And the reason I did want him to stick with Steris was less the ick, and more, that's a technical term, by the way, and more the fact that he had built up in my head, by talking about the alloy of law and all this stuff, about how Wax had learned to sort of accept his role. Had he gone with Marasi, that would have been him sort of reneging on that. Where, because she can't inherit anything.
Yeah.
That's she's not a lady. She's someone of high birth, but she's not a lady. Not
she's illegitimate, so she's just there.
And so it always seemed to be the far more interesting move was Steris, and that's for me. I wanted that because, now, don't get me wrong, had there not been more books afterward, it would have been a very disappointing decision. Just because then it's just like, okay, well, the reason it's interesting is you can develop into this.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to some future scenes with Steris. Those are going to be fun.
All right, guys. So if we want to we do have an email to talk about as well.
Yes.
So if we want to hit that, we really need to wrap up. So, but if you've got any final thoughts, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So as always, of course, we want to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to keep creating new episodes. The show continues to be free for everybody, but if you really want to support us, even with just $1 or $2 each episode, you can go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. When you become a patron, you get immediate access to our Discord channel where we've got a growing community. We've got a lot of fun discussions going on there. People talking about the show, talking about the books, talking about just different theories that they've got. So you should join us over there by becoming a patron. On Discord, you can continue the discussion. Also, you can ask us any questions that you want and help us to sort of decide new things that we want to talk about in other episodes. You also get bonus content like the 6-7, a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find each episode and want to share. You get early access to bonus content that we produce. And beyond that, our patrons are automatically entered into our giveaways. For example, our winner tonight was one of our patrons, and the entry that won was his automatic entry. Again, those giveaways are not exclusive to patrons, and they're free to enter for everybody. But the patrons just get an automatic entry rather than having to, say, like or comment on a certain post on Instagram and that kind of thing. And of course, by becoming a patron, you help us to continue to make new episodes and improve the quality of the show. As we get more patrons, we will be able to record episodes more frequently, and we'll be able to invest in better equipment to improve the audio and video quality for our listeners and viewers. Now, from time to time, we get questions from our listeners about the Cosmere and other topics, and we like to address them during the show when possible. This week, we heard from a listener named Josh, who writes, Amy or Jordan, y'all want to read this?
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, Amy, do you have it?
So it says, "Hey guys, in episode 16 there was some talk about how not enough people would have known Eastern street slang to aid in it becoming High Imperial. I want to bring to your attention that it would be very simple to teach High Imperial to those that require the knowledge by a simple set of rules. Please check this link out where there is a quote from Brandon Sanderson explaining the way to understand High Imperial. I think it's a perfect explanation." And then said link. "Thanks for doing this show, guys. I've loved Brandon's work for only a few years now, but of course there's never enough to satisfy. This gives me a chance to hear and potentially engage in discussions about something I don't get to talk about with many of my friends. Keep it up, Josh."
So we talked a little bit about High Imperial last episode. And again, I think it wouldn't be... like, if you go to the link, it actually has a rough set of rules on how to speak High Imperial, just talking about different tenses and how verb forms work and
you
stuff like that.
throw in like garbage words to garble it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so I was the one who has the issue with it. Everyone else was fine with it.
I love High Imperial.
I want to clarify something. I don't think it's that people couldn't learn it. I can't learn it. It's horrible. But it's more, to me, it didn't make sense to me that Spook would force it. However, Baggins and I have had a conversation, and Baggins made a lot of points, none of which I really agreed upon. But then Baggins brought up something different, and in my head, this makes more sense than anything else. Breeze was still alive at the end of this, and Breeze hates High Imperial. And Spook's first time really becoming part of the crew was when they all started faking High Imperial around Breeze, and Breeze is the only one who doesn't understand what's going on. Well, okay, really, no one else understands what's going on. But he's the only one not having a good time, because it's clearly at his expense.
Mm.
If for no other reason, Spook would do that to piss off Breeze. And I will buy that excuse. Because if there's anything that Spook has showed is that he idolizes Kelsier, and Kelsier would be all on board with that plan.
And I still think that people would idolize Spook and then find out about that and emulate it.
Awesome.
And I personally would love if, Brandon, you're listening. I doubt you are, because you're probably a busy man. And if you are, quit patting yourself on the back. Get back to writing. But that Spook short story, we would love it. It'd be great.
Always want more from Mistborn Era 1. Just so much fun. All right, well, Josh, thanks for writing. We appreciate hearing from you. And for those of you who want to check out that link, we have it in the show notes.
I just realized that's another Josh.
Yes, that is another Josh.
It's always a Josh.
Now, for those listeners who do have questions or feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. So let us know what you think of the show, what your favorite moments from the Cosmere have been, what topics you've been dying to know more about. Is there something about one of the books we've already discussed that you wish we talked about a little bit more? Is there something in an upcoming book that you want to make sure we don't miss? What Cosmere theories or questions are driving you mad as we wait for more books from Brandon? We'd love to hear all of it. Email us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we just might read and discuss your email in an upcoming episode. Now, of course, we've all got our own individual personal projects that we're working on. Amy, where can we find you outside of the podcast?
Also, we forgot to do the thing with Portuguese.
I forgot about that. So, Amy, why don't you tell that?
I will tell that story. So, Bill was searching randomly on the internet for our podcast and seeing what else was out there, and
Speaking
we found.
of people patting themselves on the back.
Anyway, but he found a blog from back in August, and it's from I don't know if it's how old she is, but Patricia. It's Patricia for what I'm guessing. I'm not a great Portuguese speaker. Anyway, but she did a blog post and she commented and she said she likes our blog, and we're very happy to hear that. Our podcast. I speak English. I speak words. And it was just great to see that we're getting appreciated all over the world. And so I just wanted to say, and I hope I don't slaughter this, obrigados por nos escutar. So
yeah, we love hearing back from our listeners and just hearing any sort of feedback from y'all. It makes us happy.
All warm and tingly inside. Anyway, so about me, since patting ourselves on the back. So I am on social media stuff. I'm on Facebook as Coincidence Cosplay and Props. I'm on Twitter at Coincidence Cosp because the name is too long. And I'm on Instagram as Coincidence_Cosplay. I also have a coffee page, except it's spelled KO_FI, I think it is, or -FI. Anyway, and so that's just, you can donate money to me because I didn't feel comfortable doing a Patreon yet because I'm not great at putting out content regularly. And so if I'm going to do a Patreon, then I'm going to want to have regular content.
I can't hear the name of that site without thinking of Pokemon. Coffee.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so there's that. If you feel like, anyway, I don't mind getting more money. It's cool. But no obligations. No obligations. But anyway, my other stuff that I've been working on is I haven't made much cosplay progress, but I have made my 4th D20 plush dice thing, and I have another one that I'm going to make this week. So that's 2 commissions.
About how big are those again?
They're about 15 inches across, roughly.
Okay.
So I think it's a rough
basketball size.
They're ish.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't play basketball very much, at all. So, but about there, yeah.
Like an oversized basketball.
Yeah, but much squishier.
Oh,
so,
awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, Jordan, what about you? Where can we find your stuff?
So recently I posted a video over my YouTube page about a crazy theory I have of what's coming up at BlizzCon. And specifically what I was predicting, and it's at best a 10% chance of this occurring, but I looked at a bunch of stuff, very conspiracy theory style, and I have thrown out the prediction there's going to be some sort of Diablo coming to Smash. I would recommend you all follow me on Twitter at SpliceStream or on Instagram, the real SpliceStream, because there was another and that still shocks me. And I'm going to be, when we go to BlizzCon, if you watch my video and follow me on Instagram or on Twitter, because that's the easiest way to find the video, I point to a couple of areas on the BlizzCon floor. I'm going to be making beelines for them as soon as BlizzCon opens, just to see if I can find anything. I'll be tweeting out what I find, and it may be crazy, but at least it's fun. And isn't that what we really want?
Maybe we'll put that on, if we ever end up making swag and shirts, that'll be our quote. It may be crazy, but at least it's fun. Episode title.
Man, we barely got that right at the end.
Seriously. Well, and as for me, when I am not here, I am writing board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. Guys, I finished a new review today.
Yay!
Bill, what possibly could you have reviewed that potentially relates to this?
There's no relation. What are you talking about? Okay, I reviewed the Reckoners board game, and guys, it's an awesome review, and I also linked to the video where we unboxed it. Y'all should go check it out. It's over at www.innkeeperstable.com. There's a link at the top that says board game reviews, and there'll be a list. It's the most recent one. Go check it out. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table on all of those different platforms. Now, if you've enjoyed the show, we would love it if you would go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It really helps to make a big difference to bring in new listeners. It helps people to find us, and it is the best way to support us other than becoming a patron. And of course, be sure to share the show with your friends, family, loved ones, anyone who loves Brandon Sanderson. And honestly, everyone loves Brandon Sanderson, right?
Yes.
Right?
They just don't know it yet.
We're not weird.
Only other fantasy authors that can't write as prolifically as him. Even they probably love him.
They hate how much they love him. So, before we close, though, Amy and Jordan, do you have any final thoughts about anything we've talked about tonight?
There's always more I want to talk about, but my brain doesn't want to arrange it correctly.
There's always another secret.
The thing that, not yet, false start, on Bill, 5-yard penalty, repeat third down. No, the thing that I always, because we don't really have time for it, Marsh's appearance right at the end is
right.
Yes.
Glorious fan service there, but the other thing, when the reveal of who Suit is at the end was not something I saw coming at all.
Really?
Yeah, no.
I suspected that one, actually.
Nope.
I didn't.
Completely.
I'd forgotten even, I think.
That one I actually did suspect.
And I did like that Wax was able to pull some object from his uncle.
Yeah, the ledger.
Yes.
The ledger. That's right. And he got it from probably because he spent so much time with Wayne.
Yeah.
to do that.
That was the thing I was going to talk about, is the fact that Wax is an experienced man. He knows going in that he's unlikely to be able to do much, because there's no way his uncle, who has gone to all these lengths, would be that vulnerable if he went in. And so his real goal was never about his uncle. It was always about intelligence, because that Wax is smart. And so he fakes the rage that his uncle expects, because he knows his uncle will still think of him as a child.
Yeah. Even though he's like 40.
Yeah. It's the it's called, like, the powdered butt syndrome, where once you've powdered someone's butt, you never think, like, you can never think of them as a true equal, because at some point,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna have a hard time thinking of my children as true equals, probably because I'm like, I did everything for so long. There's just no way.
Yeah, and so it's just interesting how Wax, like, he is sort of making it up as he goes, but he knows exactly how to play his uncle, get the ledger, and then take it to Wayne, and they have that great final scene where Wayne's observation is, man, this place is way more dangerous than the Roughs.
Yep. Well, and that's the point that Marisy's been making the whole time. So, all right. Well, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/innkeeperstable every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. That's all we've got for this week's episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. But in 2 weeks, on November 11th, we will be continuing our adventures in Mistborn Era 2 with Marasi and Steris, Wax and Wayne in Shadows of Self. In the meantime, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.